we cover these strategies in a lot of granular detail inside of the Six Figure Biz Academy. In fact, I will help you in the academy. I'll help you to decide where you should invest your time, and will actually help you to implement these strategies inside of your business. Now, in some cases, you might make, and I highly recommend that you create a lead magnet, right? And meaning this is something that people can download for free from your website in exchange for signing up and giving you their email address. And this gives you a great way to stay in touch with them, send them your newsletter, resources, and offers for your services. So, of course, some of these other free things don't have an exact monetary exchange, where they're giving where they're giving you their email address directly, such as if they see a blog or a live video. But you do want to always remember to, if you're doing a live video, for example, in that video, give them the next step. Let them know, hey, I have this really cool ebook called such and such. It'll help you in XYZ way. Be sure to grab it, and here's the URL, right? So guys, always remember that's a call to action. So we always want to give people a next step. You can do the same in your blog. You can say, even in the content of your blog, the body of it, you can say, and, for, a deeper dive on this topic, be sure to grab such and such tip sheet or ebook, click here to grab it. So in that way, you can get people from your blog or, in the other example, from your live stream onto your email list. Okay. And I will say, with social media, I think I mentioned this before, but let me emphasize it. The goal with social media is to get people from following you on social media onto your email list. Okay. That's a really important concept, because you don't own Instagram, you don't own Facebook. I've seen too many people just all of a sudden their account's closed and they don't really know what happened. And you just don't want that. So you want to move people from the platform to your email list. That is the ultimate goal. All right. So on your handout today, and as part of the homework tonight, I'm going to be asking you to choose the next 3 free resources you'd like to pursue or create. Just the next 3, and you'll basically just asking you to pick 3 ideas that you'd like to kind of noodle through. And then what I think would be really helpful is for each one, just do a little brainstorm on what are the 3 next steps you need to do with regards to each of those opportunities, right? So I think this way, you'll know what's next, instead of trying to do everything overnight and getting super stressed. I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I want you to take this one step at a time. So it might be, your steps. If you wanted to do an ebook, maybe you decide your next step is to lay out the idea for your ebook. Maybe you want to break it down into, maybe you're going to write about 10 mistakes people make, right? Maybe your next step is to do a little research about common mistakes that people make in your niche. Maybe you want to kind of check out other people's free ebooks to, just kind of get a sense of what you like or don't like. Or maybe you want to take pen to paper and sit down and just crank out that first draft, which I highly recommend. I would say, if I were to pick, I would say number 1, do an outline. And number 2, sit down and write your first draft without being self-critical. Just get it on paper or get it on your computer, essentially. And then, I would sleep on it, and then I would go back to it the next day and do some tweaking and fine tuning. And then maybe look into the graphics, right? You can really put it on Canva and it can turn out very beautifully. Maybe if your goal is to set up a speaking engagement or a webinar, maybe your next step is to decide what your content's going to be, right? Do some research about the structure of how to set up a free webinar, which, no surprise, I teach you the step-by-step inside of the Academy, exactly how to set up a speech or a talk. So you might think about, how would you break down your content into different segments? You might think about what offer or the next opportunity might I give on that webinar as a next step. Because guys, you always want to have a next step for your people. Maybe you want to do a little research on the platform that you would use, to deliver the webinar. And again, begin to lay out the next steps that you'll use to invite people. How are you going to get people there? So maybe that's your step, right? Maybe that's one of your 3 steps. But I just want to task you with coming up with just 3 steps that you need to do with regards to each of the 3 types of resources that you'd like to create for your audience. And again, guys, we can only do one thing at a time, one step at a time. So please don't let yourself get overwhelmed. And then when those next steps, those 3 steps are completed, you look at what you got and you come up with 3 more. So it's really an ongoing process until your resource is ready to be launched into the public. And again, this is really the best way to establish that all-important know, like, and trust, and really prime people to help them feel comfortable in buying from you, right? And then eventually it helps them to feel comfortable in making a bigger commitment to jump into your services. All right, so that'll be part of tonight's homework. And in a short while, we will stop and do some Q&A time so we can really dig deeper and talk more about this stuff. And of course, don't forget, tomorrow is all Q&A, 100% Q&A. For now, though, I'd like to continue to the middle segment of that profit pyramid and design those middle levels, which are D, C, and B, going up from free. Now, as a review of the last couple days of training, we had 3 different levels of what we would call those middle level offers. So, of course, not your free stuff. We talked about that already. And we're not going to talk about your private package just yet. That's at the very tippy top of the triangle. So let's look at those middle sections first and build those out, because those are typically your leveraged offers, and they do tend to be much more scalable, right? Okay, so for everything in these middle 3 levels, the middle part of the pyramid, from the home study, level D, where you usually offer something that people can do at home on their own time frame, that's typically residual income once you've created it, right? So, then we have that middle level, which is that C level, which is typically, again, not always, but like a 6 to 10 week webinar series. You could do a 2-day event. That would be, I've had a client do that as well. So there are different options. And then level B, if you recall, is that signature group program that tends to include more specialized group support, personal attention, and may even include, if you want, some private sessions. For all 3 of those layers of your pyramid, we have certain decisions that we need to make. And I'm going to go over those decisions with you now. But I do want to be clear, those decisions do need to be made for each of these 3 levels of your pyramid, okay? All right, so first, you'll have to decide the type of class or type of program each level is going to offer, right? And that was really your homework last night. So the overall layout and structure, for example, is this a shorter 5 or 6, 7 week course or webinar series? Is this a more in-depth program? Again, like my 6-Figure Biz Academy. Is it a high ticket group, maybe with some private time for each person? Remember, a more in-depth program will require more content and more training, a little more hand-holding, maybe some in-between support as well, but it will also command a higher price point, just as we're talking about. So a webinar series would be a lower investment than that, and home study, again, being the absolute lowest. So how long would it be? And what price do you want it to command? Those are decisions that we need to make. And because sometimes deciding the price you want to make really kind of helps you decide what kind of things you want to go into it. I mean, you could do it vice versa. You could decide what goes in it first and then make up the price. So I suppose either way would work. So this is the most obvious first thing we start with, right? But then we go to the delivery of the class. And so we go to the delivery of the class. Let's see here. Hang on one sec. Let me go to the next. Okay. So just so you guys could follow along, we're looking at the delivery of the class on the upper left of your on your worksheet. And okay, just wanted to check something real quick. So the delivery. So what are some of the key decisions that we need to make? Well, we need to decide, is this a webinar style class? Is it a video conference series? Is it live with Q&A and some interaction? Or is it pre-recorded because it's part of a home study program? Does the class actually meet in person at a location? That's an option. I know lots of people are looking forward to going back to some in-person classes. Or what combination of elements are we looking at? So that is really important for this part. So let me give you some examples to kind of help you through this. So for example, in one of the high ticket signature programs that one of my clients is doing, there are video sessions within the group. There are pre-recorded trainings that they get, right? So there's a combo of pre-recorded and video conference sessions. There's a workbook. There's a printed resource. There's a Facebook group in this case. There's an accountability journal people fill out and turn in regularly. So the class is actually delivered in a variety of different ways that are combined, right? There's different learning modalities in this particular program. And this makes sense. I think it makes most sense when you have something that's kind of a higher level signature program, right? Because you've got different learning modalities, you've got different mechanisms of support built in. You're really appealing to a variety of learning preferences. And there's just a lot more hand-holding and support. Often the simpler programs lower down on the pyramid are really generally just delivered maybe in one or two ways, right? One or two modalities. So the higher the price point, the higher up we are on the pyramid, generally the more learning modalities and support you're giving. So it's something that you'll, of course, need to think through. So let's next look at attendance. We've talked a little bit about attendance yesterday in terms of projecting numbers. Really projecting the number of people you want to have in your program. But one thing to think through is whether there needs to be a limit, a cutoff of the number of participants for them to receive the material effectively, right? In some courses, let me rephrase that. Some courses, like your level C, might be unlimited, like a 6-week or 8-week, 10-week webinar series. For that, it might not matter how many people you have in the class, right? But let's say you were doing, a live retreat and you wanted to limit it to 12 people. And just because of the nature of the work you're doing, you wanted it to be more of an intimate kind of experience. Or let's say you're doing a high touch, like mastermind group coaching kind of a program. And I'll give you guys two examples. I have a program. It's called my Elite Private Inner Circle, EPIC for short. And this is a super special, small group mastermind that's reserved only for select practitioners I only let people in if I've worked with them in the past, right? And even then, it's only, if we think it's a good fit. So there is a prerequisite for joining. It's not open to everyone. It's not open to the public ever, right? Um, and I cap it at 10 people. Okay. I cap it. So this keeps the group, like I said, very small and intimate, and everybody gets personalized attention from me in that group. Okay. There's also a Facebook group where, and the Facebook group is really helpful for check-ins and accountability and in between questions that come up. Now, another example, one of my clients, interestingly, is going to kind of copy that model, which I absolutely welcome her to do. She's actually in Epic. And yesterday she told me that she decided she is going to create kind of a similar program. Now, she happens to be a nutritionist, and she works with, women 45 and up who are struggling with hormone imbalance, gut issues, and weight challenges, right? Like all the, sleep issues, like all that stuff that is pretty common with women as they approach their 50s. And she is going to, just like mine, look for 8 to 10 women that fit the bill. Okay. So it is going to be invite only, really kind of exclusive. And she's going to give lots of personalized support in between check-ins. And she is going to charge $397 a month. Okay. And this will be an ongoing program. So guys, the point I'm making is the only limitation here is your imagination. Truly. I've tried to give you like a lot of guidelines, but there's also some gray area where things don't fit absolutely perfectly. I would say that kind of program is a level B, though. It is a level B. She happens to be charging by the month, but I also recommended that she give people an option to pay in full at a little bit of a savings, right? So she is going to give people the option to pay for 6 months in advance. So that would definitely be an option B offer. So sometimes there's limitations that we can choose on purpose so that the group participants really get the full experience. And we want to make it somewhat exclusive, right? So that can really add value. Now, next on your list is teaching versus interactive discussion time. So I want you to be thinking about what percentage of each class would be devoted to teaching time, sharing content, and then for discussion time. How much will be discussion or interactive time, if any, right? Those are decisions you do need to make. Now, if it's a home study, obviously, I'd say in almost all cases, there isn't any interactivity, right? Generally speaking, I can maybe think of a few exceptions, but I would just say at that price point that I've listed out on your pyramid, that general, price range, if it's that low price, I would say it's really probably not worth it for you to, have a lot of interactivity. Like I probably wouldn't do a Facebook group at that level because that can really be a lot of extra work. But if it's a webinar series like that, 6, 8, 10 webinar series, then what you could do is you could do it, like I usually do mine for 90 minutes. But I like to talk, so that could be part of it. I think you could easily do it in 60, right? You just have to be kind of disciplined with your time. So you could do 45 minutes teaching, 15 minutes Q&A. So I tend to do more like 60 to 70 minutes teaching. And then I try to allocate about 20 minutes for Q&A, even for my, my 6-week webinar series, just because I don't want to feel rushed. And regardless of the price point, just for me personally, I just want to make sure that people can, implement, they have the support they need to move forward. So that's how I tend to do it. But again, use your best judgment. So you want to be thinking about the interaction, the discussion, where are they going to get feedback, if any? Are you going to have a Facebook group? And guys, there are other options besides Facebook. I know I keep saying Facebook, but it works generally speaking, but there are other options. One other option, just to throw that out there for in between support, I'm hearing a lot about Voxer, Voxer. What I don't know about Voxer, though, I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. I've not used it myself. I don't know if that is a kind of a two-way communication or if you could do group communication. So if it's two-way communication, that might be a nice thing to have for your private work. If it's group communication, then that could be a nice thing to have for your any of your group programs. All right. All right. So next, you want to think about Q&A. So we talked about how question and answers fit in, how much time there is for interaction. But now we need to think about how Q&A will actually fit in. Are there questions and answers discussed throughout any time? Like while you're teaching, can people, raise their hand and ask questions? Or do you want them to basically wait until you're done teaching and use, Q&A time at the end? Now, generally speaking, in my higher my higher touch programs, such as the Six Figure Biz Academy and also EPIC, my Elite Private Inner Circle, there's interaction throughout the whole entire time. Because whatever I'm teaching, I want to make sure that, you're able to go and implement. So I do pause for questions throughout, but generally in my, my webinar series, generally speaking, I try to do the teaching and then at the end do Q&A. So that's generally how I've been doing it. So those are just decisions that you're probably going to want to make. So looking at the different levels of your program, you want to think about, again, how much interactivity that you want to make available and where does the Q&A fit in? Is it at the end or is it even offered at all? Is it something that people email in their questions in advance? I've seen that in some, actually, I see that model quite often in membership programs where you're required to email your questions like at least a week in advance. So it really depends. Now usually that's kind of a low monthly cost type of a program. You wouldn't want to do that, I don't think, with your higher end programs. You want to give people a chance to be heard on the spot. So something to give consideration to is the in-between support and contact. That's another consideration. Like I said, if there's a home study program, there's usually no additional support typically, right? It's residual income. Once the product is made and created and you're getting sales, that's generally true passive income. There is an investment up front to create the product, but generally after that, people buy, they download the product, they do it on their own, and there's not Q&A. But again, in your level C, you want to ask, do you want to have a mechanism in place where people can ask questions in between class? And honestly, the answer may be no, because maybe the price point just doesn't warrant it. So you do need to think about that. I would say generally, now when I first started, I actually did include Facebook groups, even for my level C. And it was a lot of work, but I will say people loved it. People really loved it because they went in knowing that they were going to get their questions answered. So again, it just sort of depends on how you want to do it. Nowadays in my work, I reserve that the Facebook groups, of course, like for this event, this is, of course, a lot of interaction. But for my paid programs, I do reserve that for my level A and B, right? Levels A and B only. So, for example, for my Six Figure Biz Academy or for your higher ticket signature program, I would recommend a Facebook group or, again, some kind of online community forum, because this is a place where people can post, ask questions, and really support one another between sessions. And it really helps build that sense of community. And that can be extremely valuable. So just think through these things, right? Like I would go through this checklist, and for each of your levels in your pyramid, you're going to want to make these decisions. You're also going to want to decide, can people email you directly? Can they call you? I'm not saying you have to do that, right? But, um, if you do allow this, you need to make sure it's a very, high-end program for sure. Because remember what I shared earlier, the rule of thumb is the more connection, the more access to you, the more access between sessions, the more hand-holding, the higher the price point of the group program. Even if it's a group program, the higher the price point. So it's something to give some thought to, and definitely decisions that need to be made.